spray nozzles. It's something, Darren, we've been talking about for years.
This is an exciting topic, Brian.
Yeah, it really is. So please don't change the channel. We want to talk to you about this exciting topic of spray nozzles. But seriously, when you stop and think about, okay, I want to raise a great crop, I want to make a lot of money next year, are you going to be able to do that if you don't do a good job of weed, insect, and disease control? Probably not. And spray nozzles are one of the keys to getting that control.
Well, I think of the tens of thousands of dollars that we're going to spend on weed control on our farm. It's all going to run through a spray nozzle. So those tiny little nozzles that really don't cost all that much money, and we're going to say, oh, you know, they're on the sprayer, they'll be fine from year to year. No way. We're going to look at those spray nozzles several times through the year, and then we're going to definitely look at them from year to year and consider how many dollars are running through them. We want every dollar we spend on weed control on our farm to be spent well. We don't want to have an erratic nozzle out there that's either wasting product or just not doing a good job hitting the weeds we want to hit.
Now, unfortunately, I can't give you a set guideline to tell you, well, if you get 50 acres, if you get 100 acres per nozzle out, you absolutely should be replacing that. I don't know, because it depends on what type of product you run through, how long the product sits in that nozzle, the type of nozzle that you got in the first place, the material the nozzle's made out of. So there are a lot of factors that enter into that. Just talk to your pesticide dealer or talk to your sprayer dealer. But the main thing we want you to understand is if you don't have a good spray pattern, you're absolutely not going to have the control that you want out there. You're going to have a bunch of streaks out in the field. You're just not going to be happy. So definitely consider switching out your spray nozzles once a year or at least every other year on most sprayers around the country.
Okay, here's the other thing, Brian. As you're spraying different products that you're very concerned about drift, keep in mind that if you want a drift control nozzle, you're probably going to have to give up some control, or you're probably going to have to give up some spray coverage because you're going to get bigger droplets, and it's going to be harder for big droplets to hit leaves, land on them, and stick. Now, there may be some different spray additives you can use to help you with that, so it isn't quite as much of a decrease in spray coverage switching from that flat fan nozzle and smaller droplets. But you've got to be aware of that. Now, there's a couple other products that are coming up that are going to have new spray tip recommendations. For example, dicamba tolerant crops, whether it's corn, soybeans, cotton, whatever it may be. Monsanto and BASF are going to have new recommendations for their new product that's coming out, Ingenia. You're also going to see new recommendations when the 2,4-D tolerant crops hit, and we're using the new Enlist products for the Enlist tolerant crops. So we'll be using that on corn and soybeans and cotton as well. Corn as early perhaps as this spring. So if you're going to be trying some of this new product, this Enlist Duo, that's the new Enlist, which is a version of 2,4-D, much different than anything else that's been out, but also that has Roundup in the tank. We're going to be concerned about drift. Now, we've got a pretty good formulation. I'm not saying they don't, but you have Roundup in there, and anytime you're spraying Roundup, you're certainly concerned about where that's going to land. So definitely, if you're using some of these new technologies for herbicide-tolerant crops, check into the spray nozzle recommendations those companies are making, because believe me, they're spending a lot of money trying to learn which spray tips are going to work the best with their products and their crops.
Okay, so Darren said you're going to have less coverage and less control when you switch over to these nozzles. And again, what he said was the reason why is the spray droplet is bigger. But I just want to make sure that you're clear on why we have this difference. If you can get a whole bunch of little droplets as opposed to one big droplet, think about that great big droplet. It's much more likely to splash off that leaf. It's much less likely to stick on the leaf. And yes, we know that with big droplets, they have more weight. They're going to reach the ground or reach the target faster, and they're going to reach the target most likely because they have more weight to them. They're much less likely to drift is what I'm trying to say. So with the small droplets, if you want to just use an extended range flat fan nozzle, for example, you're going to have small droplets with that extended range flat fan nozzle, which is great for spray coverage, and sometimes you will get just slightly better control than using that turbo T-jet or air induction nozzle where you'll have the bigger droplet. So what I'm trying to say here is it's great that you want to reduce drift, but I want you to think about how many weeds do I really have in the field? If I only have a handful, I don't mind giving up a little bit of control. But if I have an absolute disaster in a field, then I want you to consider using that flat fan nozzle that has the small droplets and will give you more drift, but spray it on a good day. Then take your windier days, I'm not saying real windy, but your windier days when the wind's blowing 5 to 10 miles an hour, and on those days, you want to spray your cleaner fields with the turbo T-jet or air induction nozzle.
Well, the important thing, Brian, is you don't know when that's going to happen. You may be out spraying like right now and it's still. there's no wind at all.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden a gust comes up and here comes a front passing through, and now we've got 10-mile-an-hour winds. Well, if you've got a triple nozzle body or maybe a 5-way nozzle body, you can just walk out behind your sprayer, click, 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 and in a minute or less, you've switched all your nozzles from a drift control type nozzle over to a flat fan nozzle or whatever you want to switch to. You can do it really quickly and easily right in the middle of a field.
Okay, the other thing that we want you to understand is different pesticides have different requirements. With Roundup, with Banville, those types of products, they're going to move through the plant. Okay, when you get products like Liberty that doesn't move that well through the plant, and especially Gramoxone or Buctril, some real contact killers, you have to have better spray coverage. And really, we aren't as worried about drift with those products anyway. So just keep that in mind. If you start mixing a product that drifts with a product that doesn't drift, but it doesn't have very good systemic activity, which nozzle should you really go with? You want to look at what your main target is. So for example, if the main thing you're after when you're out spraying is disease control, and you throw a little bit of Roundup in because you have a couple of weeds left out in the field, I would absolutely use my extended range flat fan nozzle. It will give you much better spray coverage than the turbo T-jet or air induction nozzle.
Well, to wrap things up, Brian, there's actually a lot more to this discussion about spray tips. So you have to be really thinking about this as you're moving into the next year. So do a little research on it. If you're using one nozzle to spray all your products on all the different weather conditions, you're doing something wrong. You need to be using different nozzles for different products, and you also need to be switching as weather conditions change on your farm.
Well, another reason why you may need to switch nozzles is if you're trying to control our Weed of the Week. There are a few products that will work. We'll talk about our Weed of the Week coming up later in the show.